follow your bliss. If you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you. And the life you ought to be living is the one you are living. When you can see that, you begin to meet people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open the doors to you. I say, follow your bliss and don't be afraid. And doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. If you follow your bliss, doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anyone else. We have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. And where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. And where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. Where we had thought to travel outwards, we shall come to the centre of our own existence. And where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world. Over 50 years ago, after a lifetime studying the myths and legends of our world, the great 20th century thinker Joseph Campbell said these words, and they ring true today. It's a similar sentiment that's been told and retold for as long as stories have existed. Joseph Campbell. Have you heard of him? Maybe, maybe not. You know the works he inspired though. That's for sure.
You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon? Should I have?
Well, the fundamental idea at the heart of Campbell's work is that of the monomyth. Put simply, stories lie at the heart of everything, at the very bedrock of our culture. Story is everything. Think of the great stories, the ones that really matter. Why did they survive when so many others disappeared? Why can some stories still be found that have their roots thousands upon thousands of years ago? From Bronze Age cattle rustlers in Ireland to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Well, today we have celebrities. Like it or not, the gods and heroes of our world. But in the past, let's just say, things were different. The world moved much slower. Themes and morality still had to be passed on to the next generation though. And as such, figures who'd been great in their own lifetimes could very well live on in eternity. As long as there was a good moral to the tale, of course. My name's Pete Kelly, and this is my mate Owen. And the summer of 2020, we got our camera gear together and headed north. To get back to nature and to enter a timeless land, absolutely filled with stories. Many with roots thousands of years in the past. It's a place that I've been visiting on and off for a decade. A place that's always held an allure in my mind. A place that partly defines my story. I don't think you'll find much of those charismatic leader types Joseph Campbell was talking about here though.
Oh, class.
But you will in the place we're visiting. This is the Peak District. Its beauty famous from the period dramas of Austen to the Anglo-Saxon poems of old. This is a landscape suffused with storytelling, a tale for every road, a story for every tree, every monument. For this land, only a few others are left like it in the UK, is mostly agricultural, with vast areas even untouched by farmers. And not much populated by modern people. Naturally occurring monuments here have attracted people for tens of thousands of years. And it was here that the very first verifiable piece of visual storytelling in Britain was etched some 12,500 years ago in the Creswell Caves. We're going to look at something that's a little more modern. A mere 5,000 years old. Nothing really in geological terms, though in human lifetimes it's around 200 generations. That's a long time. Do any stories survive from then? Any half-remembered reflections left in the folklore of this land? Well, let's have a look.
Going adventuring into the wilds. Aaron's camera is bigger than mine. So, it's the first excursion post-coronavirus. And we're out in the peaks. It's been a long time since I've been here. Many a year. And we're going to go and investigate some stone circles. We're going to have a look at the folklore of this region. Let's have a look.
Our first stop on the journey is a place that's changed little in thousands upon thousands of years.
Ho ho ho.
Its name, for most of that time, is lost. But today we know it as Stanton Moor. A great monolith stands guard here on the approach from the car park. But this wasn't made by human hands, though it may have been shaped a little over the years. It may have even been natural rock formations like this one that inspired ancient people to construct their own man-made places of worship in the first place.
So here we are at what may very well be an ancient quarry. Some of these rocks down here, hewn out of the earth many thousands of years ago, left here to stand the test of time. So this is a landscape, it's covered with stone circles. They're all over the place, and there were probably a lot more in antiquity. The stones being moved away at some point in the past. There are records in the last couple of hundred years of farmers removing stone circles, destroying them so they can use the land to make a profit. So no doubt that happened a lot more in the past as well. But it is in places like this, in the Peak District National Park, Dartmoor, north of Scotland, things like that, where you do get these ancient landscapes where not much has changed. There wasn't a huge amount of money to be made in places like this in the Industrial Revolution, so a lot of these places have survived. The sun's coming out now, it's looking like a beautiful day.
Out on Stanton Moor stand at least 3 of these megalithic sites. 2 are overgrown and inaccessible. Such is fate. But 1 is much more frequented and, well, famous. This was next on our journey.
So we have arrived at the Nine Ladies, which that quarry we saw not long ago, this is the sort of place that those stones would end up. So it wasn't always local stone that was used at these places. Stonehenge, for example, the massive sarsen stones there were dragged down from the north. The blue stones were taken all the way from the Preseli Hills in Wales. I don't know about these stones. Google it later.
Like most stone circles scattered across the island, the Nine Ladies is a truly atmospheric place. Its name, a relic of a time well over 1,000 years ago, when Christian magic was feared just as much as pagan. A time when trees spoke, when monsters stalked the woodland, when holy men and wizards engaged in battles of the mind. The legend is well known today. In fact, it has parallels with stories all over Britain and beyond. Once upon a time, so the story goes, a local girl from Stanton village was going about her business when she met a young man. After some time together, one thing led to another and they fell in love. Seeking permission from the girl's father, the two became betrothed. It was a joyful time, and the girl took several of her friends up onto the moor to dance in celebration. An elderly man from the village went too, playing the fiddle for the dancing group. The women danced, and the fiddler played. On and on and on. Shadows shortened and lengthened again. Time itself became stretched, strange minutes became days. Hours became seconds. Little did they know, but the girls had been dancing for days, so caught up in their celebrations that Saturday had dragged on into Sunday. The stars came out, moon rose, and still they danced on. So distracted were they that they didn't hear the village clock chime midnight. And this was to be their doom. For dancing on the Sabbath was a heinous sin. And for their weekend of mirth, they were destined to dance forevermore, until the very end of time. Turned to stone along with the fiddler who played the music. Of course, this is just a story. Yet it's one with a few hints at the origin of this place. Though a Christian curse in the myth, who's to say there isn't a hint of an earlier tale at its root? For in Neolithic times, this may well have been a place for celebration and for dancing at night too. Many stone circles being aligned to astronomical observances. These places were meant to be visited at night. Nearby, the Stone Age circle called Arbor Low still has a large bank around it known as a henge, which may well have served as a sort of place to stand and watch the events unfolding in the centre. Of course, today it remains impossible to say definitively what was happening at these sites all those millennia ago. We know they were important though. The sheer manpower involved tells us that much. And the fact that they survive at all, when nearly every other trace of these people's existence has disappeared. And just like religious buildings today, they may have served many purposes. Today, people still celebrate at stone circles. And no doubt they did too in pre-Christian times. Until they were finally stamped out in the early Christian era in the first millennium AD. Just maybe by a rattled priesthood seeking to imbue their own holy places with power and turn the older sites into fearful places. Of course, this is speculation. But unfortunately, there is little more to go on. The place is simply too old. In archaeology, the Nine Ladies is just one piece of a complex of prehistoric circles and standing stones on Stanton Moor. At least two others stood here in antiquity. along with who knows what other sights. And of course, stone circles may not have initially been stone circles at all. Once upon a time, they may have been much more elaborate structures. Varying wildly in form and purpose. Today, we can only see what survived. What they originally looked like? Well, there are many theories, but definitively, we simply can't say. And this is where the tale gets really wild. I'm looking at you, Joseph Campbell. The myth of the 9 ladies has parallels all over the world, in every corner of Britain, Iceland, Scandinavia, even Kenya has its own version. For Campbell, who spent an entire lifetime pinpointing similarities between myths and even religions all over the world and throughout history, they could well derive from a common source. There was something special about the number 9, that's for sure, particularly in conjunction with women. They are associated with holy wells and spiritual places all over Britain. In Norse mythology, Heimdall is said to have been born of 9 mothers. In Brand's saga, 9 Valkyries appear. Figures have 9 daughters. An Anglo-Saxon charm refers to a figure with 9 sisters. 9 maidens tend to the cauldron of the chief of Anwin in King Arthur's raid on the underworld in the poetry of Taliesin. Morgan and her 8 sisters live on the Isle of Avalon. The list goes on and on and on. Coincidence? And does this have anything to do with the 9 ladies on Stanton Moor? Well, you'll have to make your own mind up for that one. And there's plenty of material to draw from. Some of the richest you'll find anywhere. What are your favourite myths and legends, and historical places to visit? Let me know. My name's Pete Kelly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.